So, we all ask ourselves, right? How did Jeff Bezos take a little project in his garage and turn it into, well, Amazon, this absolute giant of a company? You'd think the secret sauce is locked away in a vault somewhere, but guess what? It's not. Turns out the source code for his entire philosophy has been hiding in plain sight this whole time. It's scattered all through his annual shareholder letters, the ones he wrote from 97 all the way to 2020. So we did the digging. We went through all of them and boiled it all down to four key pillars that really powered Amazon's insane growth. Let's kick things off with the first one, the one that's basically their North Star.
All right, so what is this North Star? It's one simple, powerful idea that guides literally every single decision at Amazon, and that is customer obsession. Now, hold on. This isn't just some fluffy corporate buzzword you see on a poster. Bezos draws a really, really important line in the sand here. See, most companies out there are what you'd call customer-oriented. They look at a spreadsheet, they see some data, and they react to it. It's passive. But Amazon? They're customer-obsessed. That means they're not just looking at the numbers. They're actively, relentlessly digging for the truth behind those numbers. They start with the customer's real, boots-on-the-ground experience and work backwards from there.
And oh man, there's this legendary story that just perfectly captures this. So picture this. It's the late 90s. A team is in a meeting, super proud, presenting this metric that says, hey, we answer customer service calls in under a minute. But Bezos, he's skeptical. So right there in the middle of the meeting, he grabs a phone, puts it on speaker for everyone to hear, and dials a public customer service line. The whole boardroom just sits there, waiting. 10 minutes go by, and still nothing, no answer. So what was the problem? Well, that fancy metric only counted the calls that were actually answered. It completely ignored all those frustrated people who just hung up. That is the difference. That's obsession in action.
Okay, so if customer obsession is the destination you're sailing towards, what's actually powering the ship to get you there? That brings us to the engine. And it's a pretty unique, maybe even a little controversial way of looking at innovation and failure. Bezos is a huge believer in making what he calls big asymmetric bets. So what does that mean? It's simple. You're taking risks where the potential upside, the win, is just massive. But the downside, the loss, is actually pretty limited. He knew, look, most of these bets are going to fail. But if just one of them hits it big, it could pay for all the failures and then some. To do that, though, you have to be totally okay with what he calls failing forward.
I mean, as Bezos himself put it, if you're not failing, you're just not experimenting enough. And the perfect example of this, Amazon auctions. Remember that? Probably not, because it was a total flop. They launched it in '99 to go head-to-head with eBay, and it just tanked. But here's the key. Instead of just killing the project, Bezos told the team to rework the technology behind it. Just a few months later, that exact same tech became the foundation for the Amazon marketplace. The thing that now accounts for more than half of everything sold on the site. That failure wasn't a loss, it was an investment.
Okay, so we've got our North Star, customer obsession, and we have this powerful engine of innovation. But how do you actually steer the ship day in and day out? Well, that all comes down to the company's operating system, a really unique way of making decisions. And the core of that operating system is something called the Amazon flywheel. Just think of it like this giant, heavy wheel that's hard to get started, but impossible to stop once it's going. It's a self-reinforcing loop. You start with lower prices. That attracts more customers. More customers on the site, that attracts more sellers who want to reach them. More sellers means way more selection and a better cost structure. And what does that let you do? Lower your prices even more. And the wheel just spins faster and faster, building its own unstoppable momentum.
But Bezos was smart. He knew that one single thing, could put the brakes on that flywheel and grind it to a halt. Slow, bureaucratic decision-making. So to fight that, he came up with a simple but honestly brilliant mental model. He basically says there are only two types of decisions. Type 1 decisions are one-way doors. Once you walk through, you can't go back. Think about a huge company acquisition. You have to be slow, careful, and analyze the heck out of it. But, and this is the important part, most decisions are type 2. They're two-way doors. You can walk through, take a look around, and if you don't like it, you just walk right back out. They're reversible. And those decisions, they should be made fast. You test them, and if they're wrong, you just fix it. And this is the trap Bezos saw so many other companies falling into. They paralyze themselves by treating every single decision like it's a scary, irreversible type 1 door. There's a great story about a manager who was blocking a simple test for shopping cart recommendations because they thought it was too risky. Bezos heard about it, jumped in, and was like, no, this is a classic two-way door. Just run an A/B test. So they did. And what happened? A few days later, the data was clear. It boosted sales. The feature went live for everyone.
Okay, so let's recap. You've got your destination, your powerful engine, a super fast operating system, but none of that matters, absolutely none of it, if you don't have the right culture. Culture is the glue that holds this whole thing together. And this brings us to maybe the most famous piece of the Bezos playbook, the day one mindset.
So this whole mindset, it's really built on just a few simple but super powerful beliefs. First, the idea that high standards are contagious. They spread. Second, that your culture has to be tangible, something you can see and feel through actions, not just words on a wall. Third, that when you give people real ownership, they just do better work. It's human nature. And finally, you have to be absolutely relentless about measuring what actually matters to the customer.
And this is how those beliefs stop being abstract ideas and become real. Bezos was adamant that culture isn't about motivational posters. It's about the rituals you live every day. For instance, you know how most big meetings start? At Amazon, they often begin with up to 30 minutes of total silence, where everyone just reads a detailed memo on the topic. It forces everyone to be deeply prepared. And for years, he famously had an empty chair at the main conference table. Why? It was a physical, constant reminder that the most important person in any meeting, the customer, was right there in the room with them. And that focus on what truly matters is just so critical. Bezos is a big believer in something called Goodhart's Law, which basically says that when a measurement becomes the goal, it stops being a good measurement. Here's a real-world example from 2004. The internal metrics at Amazon showed that their damaged package rates were amazing, super low. But at the same time, Bezos' inbox was flooded with complaints about their frustration-free packaging being, well, impossible to open. You see what happened? The team had optimized for the wrong thing. They were measuring if the box was intact, but they totally missed the customer's actual experience of trying to get the darn thing open. So let's put it all together. You take that intense customer obsession, you power it with an engine of innovation and failure, you run the whole thing with a fast, decisive operating system, and you bind it all together with a very real, tangible culture. All of that leads to the single most important principle of all, the one idea that keeps the whole thing from falling apart as the company gets bigger. If you go to Amazon's headquarters in Seattle, the main building isn't just a number, it's named Day One. And that's a constant daily reminder of this final principle. Day one is that restless spirit of a startup. You're hungry, you're focused on results, you're fast, you're inventing. Day two, well, as Bezos puts it, day two is stasis. That's when you get complacent. You start focusing on the process more than the outcome. And that, he says, is followed by irrelevance, decline, and eventually death. So for Bezos, it doesn't matter how big Amazon gets. It has to be, always and forever, day one. Look, these principles didn't just build a big company. They built one of the most valuable companies on the entire planet. But they're not just for billionaires with spaceships. At their very core, they're about a mindset, a way of thinking. And that leaves us with a really simple question to ask ourselves. In your own work, in your projects, or hey, even in your own life, are you operating in day one?